Okay, now that we've sorted our data, we want to consider the variables that we wish to compare here. And last week we decided that it would be better to look at just the total percent affected by either herbicides or parasites. And so we need to create a new variable, which is the sum of the percent sick plus percent dead. And you can see I've done that here. I've created this new variable, percent affected. I can kind of make that column a little skinnier if I want by dragging over. And so there are a couple ways to do this. One way is to enter a formula that just adds two cells. And the two cells that are going to be added are the values in cell G2 and in cell H2. And so I'm going to type a plus sign. That tells Microsoft Excel that I'm about to enter some kind of formula. And in this case, I'm going to go ahead and enter the references for those two cells here. So percent sick is in cell G2, so I'm going to enter a G2. And then I'm just going to add that to what's in cell H2. And so I'll type that, and then I hit enter. And you can see that it summed those two values to 0. If you look up here, there's the formula that's entered in that cell. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and delete that and show you another way to do that. Another way to do this is to type in a command. And so in this case, we want to sum two values. So the command for adding two values is sum. Okay, and you'll notice a drop-down list appears. I can go ahead and click that first one, or double-click it, and you can see a left parenthesis appears. You can also just type that left parenthesis in if you want to. And then I'm just going to go ahead and highlight the two values that I want to sum. There they are right there. And then I type in the close parentheses and hit enter, and I get the same thing, the sum of what's in cells G2 and H2. Now this is what we call a relative cell reference. So it means if I were to copy this, what's in this cell here down to this one, Microsoft would automatically know to go ahead and calculate the sum of the two values that are on the same row as it did in the one above it. And so I can copy this by right-clicking and choosing copy and then paste. Or another option is to just put my cursor down in the bottom corner where it turns to a plus sign, and then just drag this all the way down so that it highlights the entire data set. And then Microsoft Excel does those calculations for you all the way down. So this is a much better way to do calculations in a large data set than to use a calculator. And in fact, when we get to our independent projects, you will not be allowed to use calculators. You'll have to use the calculations feature in Microsoft Excel to do this. You're going to thank me for this one day. There's a little learning curve up front here, but once you learn how to do these things easily in Microsoft Excel, it's going to make your life a lot easier in your upper division courses and later on in your professional life. Okay, now that we have calculated the dependent variable that we're interested in, percent affected, which again is the sum of the percent sick and percent dead, now we have to go in and calculate our descriptive statistics, the mean, the standard deviation, and the standard error. So one thing you might want to do before you actually do this is start to get your data in a format that's a bit more visually appealing, easier to kind of tell which treatments are which, and so on. And so I've begun to do that by putting boxes around the data that is a common treatment within a common week, okay, or a common week within a common treatment. And so I've done that for most of them. I'll go ahead and do it for this one, so I'll show you how I did that. I'm just going to highlight that treatment. That's the week 0 treatment for the individuals who got parasites but did not get herbicides. I'm going to go up here to this little border box. I'm going to choose it, and I'm going to say a thick outside border. So now that puts in the thick outside border, and I've got my treatments all organized. So this is a really nice way to kind of separate your data, so it's easier to not, it makes it easier to calculate your means and not make errors. And so here's my mean box. I want to calculate the mean percent affected for this treatment for week 0. Obviously it's going to be 0, so I don't really need to do the calculation, but I'll go ahead and do it anyway, and then I'll show you how to then copy that calculation to the rest of these boxes. So let's do the mean first. When we're going to calculate a mean, we have to tell Microsoft Excel we're going to input a formula, and we type a plus, and so there it is. And the symbol for mean is average, A-V-E-R. Oh, there it is right there. I can just double click on it. Try that again, double click, good, okay. And then I'm just gonna highlight the boxes, the cells, of the values that I want to calculate the average of, and that's these 4 boxes right here. So I've highlighted them. I then close parentheses and hit enter. I'm going to go ahead and calculate my standard deviation too, and then again is a plus sign, STD. Oh, there it is right there. We want just regular old standard deviation, so I'm going to double click on that, and again I'm going to highlight those boxes, and obviously our standard deviation is going to be 0, and so there it is. And then I'm going to go ahead and calculate my standard error. And if you remember, standard error is the standard deviation by the square root of the sample size. So we've already calculated our standard deviation. We just need to divide by that by the square root of the sample size. And that's pretty easy. We just type in a plus sign. It means we're going to have a formula. And we want what's in cell M2. That's that value right there, M2. And we want to go ahead and divide that by the square root of our sample size, which in this case, for this particular treatment and week, is just 4, okay? So I'm going to type a left parentheses, and I'm going to type in the symbol for square root, SQRT, okay? There it is. I can double click on it, or I can type the left parenthesis myself, okay? And of course, the sample size is 4. I can go ahead and put that in, and so there's 4, and then close parentheses. And I think we're good. I think I might need one more parentheses. Yes, I do. And then I hit enter, and there it is. So there's our standard error, okay? Now what I want to do is make sure that this mean is calculated for all these other treatment boxes and weeks, and that's really easy to do. And so to make sure it always ends up in the first box, what I'm going to do is just highlight this entire thing, okay? And then I'm going to take that, and I'm going to go down to that bottom right corner, and I'm going to copy what's in all of those cells to the rest of these cells. So that's really easy to do. Just make it a cross down there and drag it all the way down to the end, and voila, there it is. It calculates all those for me in all those boxes, okay? And you can see where we're actually starting to get some standard deviation. Now when you do this, you might find that your values have a lot of significant figures. I'll go ahead and add some here. There's a bunch in that one. Let's maybe add a bunch to this one. And so to get rid of that, you just highlight those values. It's pretty easy. Just highlight the values. And let's say you just want it down to a couple significant figures. And so you just go ahead and mess with those until you get the number of significant figures that you want, and you're good to go. Okay? Again, that just makes your data a little cleaner. Another tip, just to kind of scrunch things together and those sorts of things. If you want to make a column thinner, you can just slide over and drag it over. Another way to do that is to select a column where the cursor turns to an arrow. Hold the Shift key, highlight that column, and it will choose that entire column that you're interested in. Excuse me, if you hold the Shift key, you can choose more columns. Okay, and then I can go over, and when that cursor turns to kind of a cross with a horizontal arrow, double click it, and it sets the width of those columns to the largest or the widest thing in it. So a nice way to do that, okay? Alrighty.